Now I'm going to introduce a speaker. Flew her all the way in from New York. Great speaker, Mary D.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo! Woo! Okay. You can hear me without this thing, but I'm glad it's on. My name is Mary, and I'm definitely an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 7th of 1983, and it might not impress you, but it impresses the hell out of me. Because prior to that, well, it actually didn't ever occur to me to not drink until I got to AA. It never occurred to me that drinking was a problem. Drinking was the solution to all my problems. And I'm just so grateful today that I listened, and I'm a first day baby. Again, I have no idea why, because I did everything wrong. Okay, sorry, I'm nervous. Those of you in the room who are of Irish extraction understand what that means. Okay, I have 72 first cousins. So, someone was either getting married, baptized, christened, dying, whatever. Us kids got a little keg of birch beer. So I learned young. And I wanted to drink. I wanted to be old. I wanted to be an adult. I wanted to drink. Also, I believe that I was an alcoholic from the get-go because I just never seemed to fit in anywhere. No matter what I did, I was so self-conscious. And I know today that that's just that crazy, selfish self-centeredness. One of the best things I learned in AA is that nobody cares. Nobody really cares what I'm doing or what I look like. It was so freeing because I could finally be myself, whoever that was. So my parents sent me to Our Lady of Mercy High School in Rochester, New York, for what young ladies of promise, or they got some goddamn, thing. I got arrested once singing the alma mater with another girl who went to the West Side Catholic Girls' School. We were screaming at each other in a field, and I got arrested. And I still know the alma mater, which is amazing to me. Anyway, so I remember the first time I got good and drunk because I felt like a toaster that just got plugged in. Like I was off and then I was on. I mean, on. I had friends, the boys liked, I couldn't wait to do it again. And I got in trouble that night, big trouble, missed my curfew, threw up everywhere, and couldn't wait to do it again the next night. Yeah, so I have 6 younger brothers and sisters. And when I tell you that I was like portrait of a teenage alcoholic, I am not even kidding. I was just constantly in trouble. I always got caught. My husband is also the oldest in his family, and we just would laugh with each other at these stories of growing up because I always got caught, and my sister, a year younger than me, never got caught. She left in the middle of the night in a nightgown and a mink coat and came back at 7 a.m., broad daylight, wearing the coat, drunk as hell, waltzed in the house, and no one saw her but me. But today I know, I'm grateful that I got caught because I'd probably be dead otherwise, the way I drank. So I lasted 2 years at Our Lady of Mercy. I was asked to leave, finally, because I was playing the part of Captain Hook in Peter Pan, the leader of a band of drunken pirates. And guess what? What an actress. She is really good at portraying a drunk person, because I was. I'm sorry. I'm still nervous. Yeah, so that was high school. So I went to East High School, which is in the ghetto in Rochester. It was actually very good for me. I probably should have been there in the first place. Again, because I wasn't fitting in that Catholic girl role. I don't know how it was for y'all, but in the 70s, in Catholic school, it was like the 50s. We were being brought up to get married because finding a husband was going to fix everything. And even then, I really didn't, I didn't want to do that. So I graduated from high school without a plan, but it was the 70s and everybody could go to college. So I sat down with a map of New York State and I measured the distance to all the SUNY campuses, and SUNY Potsdam was 11 and a half inches from Rochester, so I'm going to Potsdam. Because my problem was Rochester, where I lived. Okay? I get up to Potsdam. That year, Potsdam was declared to be the #1 party school in the United States by Playboy magazine. They took the number of kegs sold and divided it by the number of students. We won. And right away, I never went to class. And I remember this woman on the hall where I was living. She was like, "Why are you here? You know, you never go to class." And I had no answer. I was there to be popular. I attended bar. I went to the townie bar. I was there to be cool. Okay. Because my whole life was about being cool. So after a year, Potsdam was like, "You gotta go." So I got kicked out. I moved back home with my little brothers and sisters. Would get up in the morning to go to parochial school, put their little uniforms on. I would be up drinking, listening to Bessie Smith and Billie Holiday because my heart was once again broken by a man. I got the blues, don't you know? In my family's little suburban house, I'm not even kidding you, till all hours. And, singing and crying and smoking and just craziness. It never occurred to me about the 8 other people that lived in that house. If I wanted to get drunk and feel sorry for myself and sing along to the blues, I was gonna do it. I do remember, though, one of the times when I slit my wrists, bleeding in the snow, my poor mother crying. "What is the matter, honey? What is the matter?" I had no answer because it never occurred to me that the alcohol was the problem. The problem was these other people and their expectations. Does not work to potential. How many of you had that on your report card? Yeah. Wait till you hear the rest of my story. But in the time when I was doing all that, I was going to the community college and doing okay. Actually going to class and making the grade. So after a semester, it was time to go back to Potsdam. I broke it, like I said, heartbroken, although today I look back and that was not the situation at all. It was going good, so I had to inject some drama, do a little manipulating to make the situation, more fun. What's my idea of fun? Screaming, chasing people across, the quad. You, cause, yeah, so I went back to Potsdam, and I really didn't go to class that time. But that's all right, I fell in love again. Philip moved into my dorm room with his waterbed because it didn't have a heater. He lived in this house that didn't have heat. When he first moved there, he, of course, had been kicked out, too. I could sure pick him. And he lived in this house in Potsdam, New York. Potsdam, New York is tundra. It's up by Quebec, like at 20 below, frequently. And so we had this waterbed with no heat, and if you fell asleep and you were drunk, and you fell asleep, like your arm would be on the part of the waterbed that was really cold, and I'd wake up, I'd be like, my arm would be like frozen. But that was, you know how it is when you're drinking, you just go with it. So anyway, so he moved his waterbed into my dorm room, and we never went to class, but we had a really good time. So this time, they were like, okay, we really mean it this time. Don't come back. So he kicked me out, but that was okay because Phil and I were moving to Long Island, and we were going to be in a Grateful Dead cover band. We made it as far as his parents' house in Rockland County. And I lasted about a month there. And I remember calling one of my girlfriends. I was like, no, I don't think I can do this. So I moved back home. My father paid for all my belongings to be packaged and sent back to Rochester. And I will never forget standing in my parents' driveway and opening a box full of broken glass and potting soil because I had shipped my plants were very important to me. And I just remember my father opening the box and going, get a job. So that began my career as a waitress. In the morning, I worked at this dive downtown, and they didn't have a printed menu, and they sold Pepsi and not Coke, and it was during Saturday Night Live, so I got to say it all the time, no Coke, Pepsi. And you had to scream out the order, which I also loved. And that was okay because all my other friends that were losers had been kicked out of their colleges, so we were all there. And we all lived on a one-way street, Woodlawn, that was in the worst part of town, and we didn't care. We all had shitty jobs, you know. Our parents weren't talking to us, we didn't care. And this story's from my husband. At night, I worked at the Genesee Valley Club, which is where all the politicians and the rich people ate. And my final straw with that place, one night, that you would have these private dinners upstairs. And they would have their wine and everything. And one of the people didn't show up, and there was an extra bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon and a filet and scallops. So the manager comes up and he opens the door to a closet, and I'm sitting there with the Cabernet and the filet and a candelabra because there was no lights. And I'm like, oh. Because that's the kind of shit I use. Because it never occurred to me that you shouldn't do that. Do you know what I mean? That you weren't supposed to behave like that. That actually, now that I think about it, that wasn't the final straw. The final straw was when, again, I got arrested. This time I was wearing a pink tablecloth and nothing else at the pool in the back of the Valley Club where we used to go at night. And we said it was the Hondurans that did it because we invited all the Honduran kitchen help, and they brought their entire family and hibachis and music, and I was wearing a tablecloth, so whatever. Yeah. So that's how I rolled, and I just drank all the time, and life was a big party, and every once in a while I'd try to kill myself, so what, you know. Again, never connected it to the drinking. Okay, so what happened? At the end of my drinking, I was living with a guy named Grateful Ed. It's true. Grateful Ed was about 12 years older than me, and he wasn't terribly good looking. And I just remember one time he was at my parents' house and he said something to the effect of, when you watch golf on TV, you're really burnt. Yeah, they loved Ed. And recently when I was home, my mother was like, what were you doing? I said, well, Mommy paid the rent.
How'd you wash the dishes?
You can't do that, okay? I've spoken in so many different places at home. People yell things out like the greatest hits. Tell them about this one. No. Yes. If the dishes got too high, I would open the window and throw them out. Because the Goodwill was right around the corner, and, I wasn't spending my waitress money on cutlery. All right, so I'm living with Grateful Ed. Grateful Ed and I had a series of horrible apartments. And again, on Woodlawn Street, I don't know what it was. This is this one-way street. One time when I was working at a Chinese restaurant, I convinced a Greyhound bus driver to give me a ride home, and the bus got stuck between two trees on this street. I have to laugh, okay? I was having fun. I was having a great time. Except what was happening? My friends were doing what? Finishing their college degrees, getting into serious relationships, starting families, buying homes. Me and Grateful Ed are saving our money so we'd go to Boston, and then we'd follow the band to, they'd play at Hartford, and yeah. My God. But that was my true real life. So we moved into this apartment on the second floor, and the first night we were there, we witnessed a stabbing on the sidewalk below. The guy that did the stabbing was Jose. Jose was the kind of guy, when you saw him coming on the street, you'd go to the other side of the street. He was the baddest dude on the avenue. He was a scary dude. He comes up later. So in addition to the alcoholism, I developed all this gastric stuff, and I would have to go to the emergency room or the doctor because I'd be throwing up blood, because that's normal. So this one time, I used to go to poor people doctor, the roulette, whoever shows up. And I got this woman. She was from San Francisco. She had earrings and hairy legs and Birkenstocks. And I thought, she must be a feminist. She must be really cool. And she was very cool. And I didn't, like I said, I had been to shrinks, all kinds of stuff. She didn't say anything about fill out a form or anything. She looked at me and she said, I go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous to become inspired to continue with my medical studies. I think those people are fantastic. I was just stunned. The word would be stunned. So that was part of the seed, okay? The seed was planted in various places through various people. So I go to my first meeting, and I run into a gal that I used to wait tables with. And she said, there's another meeting right after this at 10 o'clock. You want to come? I said, sure. I go in, and I'm not even kidding you. Jose was chairing the AA meeting. Because that's how this shit goes, okay? I really didn't need too much more convincing. So, at that time, I had insurance. I still don't know how that happened. So I go in this woman's office, and she lays out these brochures, and I swear I saw tennis courts. And I was like, just a month out in the country. I need to get out of this city. It's messing with my head, and I'm thinking I'm going to get a little vacation. Yeah. No tennis courts at this place. Absolutely no tennis courts. My sisters drove me down. They had loudspeakers up in the trees and stuff. And it was hilarious because no, I'm good. I got to do something with my hands, Bobby, thanks. This is 40 years later, okay? Can you just imagine what 40 years ago was? Oh my God. It was crazy. Anyway, they put me in this like little lounge area, and then they forgot about me for like 3 hours. And this is hilarious. While I was there, it was Chit Chat in Pennsylvania, which I guess is a really good rehab. What do I know? Although within 2 weeks, I was telling them how terrible they were, and they didn't know how to run it. Because I didn't have any ego problem. Yeah, so they left me there and they had like this, the manuscript for ACOA. So for 3 hours, I'm reading this manuscript, and after 3 hours, I knew my father. It was all his fault. He wasn't, whatever. So within like 3 days, they're like, honey, I immediately was like, oh, I'm not as bad as these people. You know, I didn't go to jail. Why did I not go to jail? Well, I knew the cops that arrested me, first of all. It helps. I didn't have a vehicle, so there was no DWI. I was never going to get a vehicle. You know, all the things that would lead one to, I didn't have that shit. And I wasn't ever going to. The only reason I wasn't homeless was Grateful Dead. You know, it's true. It's true. So, I really wanted to be crazy, but I wasn't. They said, no. You need step 2. You know, your insanity is, we call that alcoholism. And I was, no. I have these other deep psychological issues that I have to drink to get over. They were like, no. So they sent me to a halfway house for alcoholic women. And they didn't send me to the nice halfway house with the matching carpet and the furniture. No. They sent me to the halfway house for indigent persons in beautiful downtown Wilmington, Delaware. And all of a sudden, I'm middle class again. I'm looking around, and I just will never forget they had those bedspreads with the little pom-poms on them. You know what I'm talking about? And that was the end for me. I was like, oh, God. But I stayed. I would lay on the bed and look at the Delaware Memorial Bridge and cry, wait for Grateful Dead to come and rescue me from the house. And he never came. He never came. When I went back to the apartment to get my shit, some of the stuff that I had was still in the refrigerator 7 months later. Because Ed had a problem with alcohol too. I wonder why I picked him. Yeah. So I started going to AA every day. I would go on the date. Actually, let me back it up. Usually, they were like, Mary, we want you to get honest about your methamphetamine problem. I've never taken speed. I don't need to. It's true. It's true. All right, I got to speed this up. I spent over my 15 minutes on the drunk log part. I hate that. Account for the last 40 years, Mary. Well, yeah, so I lived in this halfway house for a year. I went to AA every day. I went to AA in the van. So if you've ever had to go to meetings in a van, you are my people. I thought I would never laugh again. These women in this halfway house were the most hilarious, fun, loving women I've ever known. It was the gallows humor, but it was funny. So after a year, I was like, well, maybe I should finish my degree. So I went and I was talking to this guy about a little 15-minute appointment with this guy to talk about maybe going back to school. 2 hours later, I leave this man's office and I'm enrolled full-time as an undergraduate at the University of Delaware, and they were going to pay for my education. Can I tell you, going to school when you're not drunk is mind-blowing. It was so great. After 5 years, they were like, pick a graduate course or you have to graduate. I had 3 jobs. I rode my bike. Okay? I went to the same place every day. And back the Presbyterians have been so good to us Catholics, I'll tell you. They always, every meeting. So I went almost every day to the Westminster House. It was in back of the Presbyterian Church. And it was the only place in town to get, so everybody was there. The bikers were there. The people that played golf every day were there. And I would be at the noon meeting every day, and I always had a topic. They'd say, does anyone have a topic around a drink? And the whole room would turn around and look. What's she gonna say today? I will tell you 2 stories. Here I am in Delaware, home of DuPont. The first year was like a dream, but then I was in chemistry with people that were gonna be chemical engineers. I'd be like, I need to bring up the topic of chemistry. And there'd be 10 retired DuPont chemists in the room. And their service work would be helping me with my homework. And I'm telling you, the first 5 years of my sobriety were like that. It was like walking, it was fairy dust. It just was. It was just, God was everywhere. And then I got cancer. I got cancer in my lady parts because I was a naughty Catholic girl. Okay? That Catholic God, I knew it was him all along. It's not this other higher power they're talking about at AA. It's that vengeful asshole up there. He doesn't want me to have fun. And I hadn't had sex in a year, okay? I'm on my bike, coming home from the waitress job, all these drunken sluts all over the campus. And I got cancer in my hoo-ha. Yeah. You can't make this shit up. So I go to the hospital, I have surgery, and all the little old men from AA come to visit me. And the nurse comes in and she looks at me and she goes, what do you do? It was great. So I graduated with a degree in geology. I was going to move to Wyoming, maybe go to the Colorado School of Mines. But before I did that, I moved to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, to make a bunch of money. It rained every weekend. End of September that year, Hurricane Hugo came to the beach. I was living in a basement, a block from the beach. And I just remember going, okay, God, it's clear to me. I need to go back to Rochester temporarily. This was in 1989. A year later, on my birthday, I was hired by the Rochester City School District to work at the School of the Arts. I didn't tell you, but one of the things that I did, I sang. I did opera with Renee Fleming. Her dad was my music teacher. And I remember, she was the reason I changed my major, by the way, at Potsdam. She got up and sang. I was like, no, English. I'll do English. So I got this job, teaching at this art school. And for the first 5 years, I was on a mission from God. I would get there at 5 in the morning and stay until 6 and 7 at night and go to a meeting. Rinse, repeat. It's not a good way to live. But I was so happy. I was so happy because I really was being of service. Totally. And these kids, these art kids, they're from they got nothing, okay? But their talent is there. And they're weird and they're different, and that's why, I love them. They were me when I was young, you know? So, let's see. Okay. I kept going to meetings. Another miracle thing that happened was my sister, the mint coat sister, decided to come into the program when I moved back to Rochester. So I couldn't sponsor her, but I could take her to meetings. And that got me to meetings because they were snobs. This is where I'm from, and call them Yankee assholes. Because I really had it together, okay? Yeah, it was hard because they did AA different. All I can tell you is every time you move and you're sober, wherever you go, they do it wrong. Okay? That's completely wrong. I don't know how anybody is able to maintain any sobriety in this place. Yeah, so my sister and I, we took a coffee commitment right away. We were greeters this other place, and ba-da. Yeah, so I get this great job, and I had to speak at a place called Chautauqua, and it's a different kind of place. So I had to speak. It was a big deal, and I run into Chris. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he may not remember it this way, but our first date, we got in an argument about the correct route to Chautauqua from Rochester. Of course, he had spent his summers at Chautauqua when he was a teenager, but I still knew that my way was better. And it's just been bliss ever since. I will tell you that, so we used to go up to the Adirondacks and mountain climb, and we were in the car and we're listening to Canadian radio the day that Jerry Garcia died. And I look over, he's driving, and I see a tear. I was like, ooh, he's deep. There's more there than meets the eye. So, but we did it different. I didn't move in with him. I don't know how it goes for y'all, okay? I remember being all up in arms about the possibility of prostitutes at the halfway house. And the woman was like, what do you think you are? And I had to think about it, and she's right. You could have had me for a pitcher of beer if the moon was in the right position, you know? Truth. Gosh. Oh yeah, I have a couple stories from my home group in Delaware. 2 stories. One of my favorite people at my home group in Delaware was Vietnam Roger. We had like 4 Rogers. The Vietnam Roger. I thank God you people in Ho Chi Minh for where I am today. It's very intense, Raj. Raj had problems other than alcohol. Every once in a while, Raj would not take his meds and show up to the meeting without his clothes but with his shotgun. So, I have to tell you this great story. We had a 4-hour group conscious. The room got so hot. People were in and out. Everyone got to speak. The blowhards would speak over and over again. But we all hung in there. And after 4 hours, we came to a decision that Raj was going to be on probation for 90 days. And he couldn't come to the meeting until he got his shit together. Now, if you've been in AA any length of time, you know how the rest of the story goes. Roger, of course, went to more meetings in the next 90 days than he didn't pay for a single meal, because that is how we roll, okay? If you're in this thing for real, we're going to take care of you, okay? You might not like what we say. We might hurt your feelings. But I remember him telling me that feelings weren't facts. And I was like, what? Because I lived my whole life based on my feelings. What are you talking about? They're not facts. Everything I did, however I felt, impulse. Jesus. It's a wonder that I'm alive. So Then, right before I graduated, the Westminster House got struck by lightning and burned to the ground. Many old-timers felt it was divine providence. I remember riding up on my bike, and Marlene was out in front. Marlene. When Marlene was drinking, she used to ride her bike around Newark in a nun costume, Sister Mary Quaalude. She dealt out of... Yeah, some real characters. So she's standing there in front of the charred, smoldering remains of my home group with the Bible in one hand and the big book in the other, and I was just like, okay. Turned around and kept going. Yeah. So, back to Chris. So, yeah, the tear, all that. And we were going up to the Adirondacks to quit smoking. If I could talk for an hour about my experience with tobacco and cigarettes. Oh, my God. So, yeah, so we did quit smoking. I turned in my thesis 2 days before it was due. And then we were talking about maybe I was pregnant like in a minute, okay? And Chris's first marriage broke up because they couldn't conceive. And I had cancer in my lady parts. But we conceived a child. It wasn't really on my schedule, but hey. So we had this kid. It was crazy. Chris had the worst job. I took a year off and somehow we ate. And the kid was okay. And we stayed sober. All I can tell you, wow, it's just, the whole thing just blows my mind. Yeah, so I kept teaching. We bought another house. I stayed sober. He stayed sober. My teaching job, though, I watched things change over 30 years, okay? And I'm as passionate as the next person, but by the time COVID came along, it was, even I had to say, I surrender. I just can't do this anymore. And all I can do today is pray. Because God's in charge, okay? I have a higher power, and the public schools have a higher power. You know? But I've developed some relationships in those 30 years, man. I just love those kids. And I got the best compliment ever from this girl, Jamila. Jamila said, Miss Dorr, she would cut a bitch for you. Because I would. And I really miss the kids. So what am I doing here in Lake Havasu City? So my crazy husband, COVID came, Chris had a heart thing, and then he had cancer. And he thought it would be a really good idea to sell our beautiful home and give away all our possessions and move into a recreational vehicle. And since I couldn't come up with a better idea, we did that. So here I am. I'll tell you, I am so grateful that I went to a meeting every single day for the first 13 years of my sobriety. We've been all over the West and up into Canada, and these small towns have been wiped out. Their AA meetings just do not exist. There's the computer, which I have to admit, my addiction these days is Reese's peanut butter cups and Facebook, okay? I spend a lot of time on that computer, more time than probably I should, but whatever. I'm kind of sorry. Yeah, I'm not. This I will not give up. I wish I could say the quote, but I can't. The best thing about staying sober for this long is that I'm really me. I don't know who that is, though. It's really weird to be in this RV. I'm not the teacher anymore. I'm not the big sister. I'm Chris's wife. That's about it, and a recovering person. So it's really, it's paradoxical. It's just like AA, you know, surrender to win. And I remember when they would say that stuff, what? What do you mean? And I still don't know what it means, really. The surrender for me is that I am an alcoholic. I am still an alcoholic. I will be an alcoholic until I die. And if I die sober, that depends on what I do each 24 hours until that time comes. And we don't know how long we have. That sister that got sober with me, or came into the program when I moved back home, once the meetings changed, I say the meetings changed, but Kate didn't. Because in other places, they don't have the luxury of a meeting place. You know, the church gets sold, the school goes under, whatever. And when the final meeting that she was attending stopped being a meeting, she stopped going. She also had bipolar illness, and she died from kidney failure. And it was crazy. And I grieve her. She was the closest, we were Irish twins. She's 11 months younger than me. And I miss her terribly. Yeah, but life goes on. So our son lived in Japan for 4 years and stayed in touch with his Japanese girlfriend, and she is now pregnant with our grandchild. She's cute as a button. She is. Her English isn't really good, but you know what? You see them together, and they love each other. It's clear. And my brothers and sisters have grandchildren. I still my best friend in AA. I met her the day I came back to Rochester. I parked the U-Haul. I go to the Thursday night meeting, and she was the secretary. And Jimmy Garland, oh my God, my old timers. You stick all my old timers. They're here. They're in my heart. Jimmy Garland, how you doing? He just, yeah, he was just great. And her name's Muffy. Don't hold that against her. It's not her fault. It's where she grew up. She's an art teacher. She's the art teacher at the science school on the west side. I'm the science teacher at the art school on the east side. We roll together. It's true. It's true. And she's still sober, and she's still my best friend, and talk to her all the time. So I think I'm running out of stuff, and I'm going to stop. It's really, wait. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. We have felt so welcomed here in Lake Havasu City, and just picture you, so lucky you guys are to have this fellowship. You are so fortunate to have this fellowship, and you're so vibrant. That's what I love. I go to the old guy meeting. I love it, though. It makes my heart so happy, because it just reminds me of my old timers. A lot of them have died, but they died sober. And you go to their funeral, and there's 200 people there, and their families are always like, who are all these people? Or when someone needs anything, that's, oh my God, I could never catapulted into the fourth dimension. Are you kidding? You know? So I hope I never, ever take it for granted. Never. So thanks again.